America's toughest prison.
This was a living hell.
And the nation's most dangerous criminals.
If I escape, if I make it, fine. If I don't, they're prepared to die.
The prisoners and the prison, pitted against each other. Desperation versus domination on Alcatraz. Just north of the city of San Francisco and near the Golden Gate Bridge, Alcatraz is an island prison like no other. The ultimate battle wages on this cold, windswept island. The cement and steel structure of Alcatraz, a prison geared for punishment. Facing off against the hardened criminals housed inside, determined to challenge the Rock.
Don't move!
In this showdown between man and prison, who will win? It's the most escape-proof 9 hectares in the United States. Everything about this maximum security super prison is designed to break the wills of the country's most notorious criminals. Cold, bare cells. Trapped inside a half-hectare of concrete and steel. Watched by armed guards. Behind barbed wire fences. And surrounded by 2 kilometers of frigid waters. For the more than 1,500 men who pass through these doors, life on Alcatraz means isolation and intimidation.
Well, the primary purpose of the prison was to break you physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, however you could do it.
In 1934, the prison opens for business. Its guests would soon include the most legendary outlaws of the time, men like Al Capone, Alvin Creepy Karpis, and Robert Stroud, the infamous Birdman of Alcatraz. They lead a crime wave that shakes the nation. Gangsters, armed robbers, and kidnappers seem out of control. Federal authorities have to fight back. A prison that will crack the criminals once and for all. Enter Alcatraz.
I imagine like a person going into a tomb or going into a coffin. I felt like this is it. This is the end of the line.
Oh, each convict had a separate image. My image of the prison was that it was escape-proof.
If you were in a place where you're not authorized to go, they could shoot you.
For 5 years, The Rock maintains a fearsome reputation, with few attempts to crack it. Then, in 1939, one inmate hatches an ingenious plan. The inmate is Doc Barker, a member of the notorious Barker Gang, led by his own mother, Ma Barker. Doc and the Barker Gang launch a terrifying crime spree, robbing, kidnapping, and shooting his way through the Midwest. Wily and desperate, Barker tangles with authorities for almost 20 years. When the FBI finally catches him in 1935, they throw him into Alcatraz for life. But Doc has other ideas. Barker is locked up in the Alcatraz cell house, an unbreakable monster of a building.
It was an extremely high secure prison. It was a maximum custody, minimum privilege institution.
The prison building, 130 meters long, 40 meters wide, made of reinforced concrete, a third of a meter thick. In all, it took almost 5,000 cubic meters of concrete to build. That's enough concrete to make a 1-meter sidewalk nearly 50 kilometers long, almost 20 times the length of the Golden Gate Bridge. Heavy, tool-proof steel bars cover every window, and steel plate doors block every entrance. It's clear to Barker he's trapped inside America's most secure prison.
On Alcatraz, you were under a gun 24 hours a day.
But Doc Barker is a fighter, and Alcatraz will be his greatest fight. A careful observer, Barker studies the prison layout, looking for weaknesses. Inside the cell house where Barker is locked up are 4 parallel cell blocks: A, B, C, and D. They contain nearly 600 cells, housing an average of 250 of the country's worst convicts. A block is rarely used. Most inmates, including Barker, do their time in blocks B and C. Barker has plenty of time to think about escape. He spends at least 16 hours a day inside his claustrophobic cell, about the size of a large toilet stall.
These cells, as you can see, are very small. They're 5 by 9 by 7. And to me, we called them boxes.
Just 1 block over is D block. For the worst, most violent inmates, the infamous Cell Block D is the ultimate in physical and psychological distress. Step out of line on Alcatraz, and that's where you'll go. No contact with other inmates. Meals in the cell. Days of isolation and despair. In the rare moments out of his cell, Barker notices the D-block bars. They just might give him a way out. Most cells on Alcatraz are covered with tool-proof bars. Made with 8 carbon alloy steel ribs, the bars can resist hours of sawing.
So if anyone starts to saw on them, they're going to make some progress at first, and then they're going to hit the inner core and slow down considerably.
But the bars in D-block are another story entirely. Dating back to 1911, when Alcatraz was a military prison, these bars are made of mild strap steel. They're flat, soft, and much easier to saw through.
The flat steel, it's very thin. The rivets, you can saw a rivet off, you can pry the bars apart.
The reason? In 1933, Alcatraz was transferred from the military to the Department of Justice. It became America's 5th federal penitentiary, but it was the first to be entirely maximum security, the end of the line for the country's worst criminals. To upgrade this super prison, authorities added tool-proof bars to cell blocks B and C, but the money ran out, and cell blocks A and D were left untouched. If Barker can get transferred from his cell into D block, he might have a chance to break out. But first, he needs help from other inmates. On Alcatraz, help is easy to come by. Inmates talk constantly about structural weaknesses and escape plans.
Everybody thinks about it out here. I used to sit up on those top steps in the yard there, look out across the wall and look at that very bay right there.
They did absolutely hand down tips to each other. Who got out of here? How'd they get out of here? And how can we improve on that?
I would say that constantly there was always at least 50 or 80 inmates out of the 200 who were scheming ways and avenues of escaping from Alcatraz.
Inmates Rufus McCain, Henry Young, Dale Stamphill, and William Martin joined Barker's escape plan. All 5 men deliberately caused trouble, starting fights, carrying contraband. All are thrown into D block. Barker's plot to challenge the prison is quickly taking shape. He'll saw out of D block and break through the window bars. Once outside, he'll run to the water and paddle to shore on a driftwood raft. Although it won't be easy, Barker and his crew plan to make a break or die trying. The first challenge, get tools into D block. There are hacksaws in the prison workshop, known as the Model Industries building. But a metal detector at the cell house entrance stops anyone from sneaking in contraband. Then Barker finds a flaw. The metal detectors, relatively new to American prisons, aren't 100% accurate. Other cons smuggle in hacksaw blades from the prison workshops, hidden in their clothing. When the blades arrive, Barker's gang gets to work. During the night, they quietly saw their cell bars, hiding the marks with black paint. After a few days of work, the bars are cut.
The convicts cut the tops of the bars below the cross brace and simply bent the bars down like licorice whips, crawled out, and then they would go back into their cells, bend the bars back up to avoid detection.
The next challenge, how to break through the cell house windows. But unlike the soft bars of D Block, the cell house windows are covered with heavy, tool-proof bars. The hacksaw blades are useless. Barker and his crew come up with a creative solution. A 7-centimeter long bar spreader made from a threaded bolt and nut inside a metal tube. Over the course of a few days, while other inmates distract the guards, Barker and his men use the spreader to break the bars. With a wrench, they expand the spreader and wedge the bars from 7 centimeters to 14 centimeters wide.
We would put it in place and extend it to its limit, and then move it over to the other side and bend the bar back. 3 repetitions were enough to break the tool-proof core. Henry Young, May 3rd, 1941.
But what about the guards? Alcatraz has 3 for every 1 prisoner, up to 4 times more than any prison in the country. Nearly 100 guards in total. Inside the cell house, they conduct inmate head counts every 2 hours. Outside, 6 guard towers watch over the island. Barker is literally surrounded.
You were watched constantly, even at night when you were locked in a cell.
But Doc Barker has a plan to deal with the guards. Inside the cell house, they could make a break for it between bed checks. A foggy night could cover them outside. 3 in the morning, January 13th, 1939. A thick fog blankets Alcatraz. A guard finishes his rounds in D Block and moves on. Doc Barker and his crew make their move. They push aside the sawed bars of their cells, then climb through the pre-snapped bars of the window. Outside, they run for the water's edge. The plan is working perfectly. The men strip to their underwear and crouch by the water, using their clothes to make a driftwood raft. Suddenly, the night comes alive with sirens and spotlights. They've been discovered. Without warning, Barker and his men are surrounded. Guards yell for the men to freeze. But Barker is too close to freedom. As he runs, shots ring out. A bullet hits Barker in the head. The other men give up. In the prison hospital that night, Doc takes his last breath.
They didn't get off the island, but they did get out of their cells and out of the cell house. It was the first time that had happened.
Doc Barker had Alcatraz on the ropes. He sawed his way out of D Block and busted out of the steel-covered cell house windows. He even got past the guards, but Alcatraz survived the test, thanks to alert guards on a routine bed check. Yet Doc Barker's failed escape proves the D Block bars are weak. Prison authorities take action. D Block is completely rebuilt. The flat bars are removed. In their place, strong, tool-proof bars. D Block cells are encased in half-centimeter thick steel plating, turning these cells into cold steel boxes. But the worst is to come. 5 new cells with 8-centimeter thick solid steel plate doors, designed to break the will of the most incorrigible inmates. Welcome to the hole.
Being inside the hole is total misery, mental anguish. At times you just want to bang your head on the wall.
This is where they put you for major infractions of the rules, which could be anything from making homebrew to fighting, attacking a guard. You can't hear anything and you can't see anything, and you're totally alone. It's a real mental struggle to keep yourself together.
For inmates who break the rules, staying sane in the hole is a constant struggle.
In order to occupy your time and keep your mind from just going completely berserk, you had to find some means to amuse yourself. I'd pull a button off my coveralls, I would flip it, shut my eyes, turn around in circles, then get down on my hands and knees and see if I could find sledding. And I would do this over and over and over and over again.
From isolation to intimidation, Alcatraz is America's toughest prison. In 1946, another inmate tries to prove he's tougher. As a super prison, Alcatraz is designed to frighten prisoners with a show of strength and authority.
It was generally believed throughout the federal prison system that Alcatraz was a pretty mean place and you didn't want to work there.
The isolated island is an ideal location for a prison. Water as cold as 12 degrees Celsius and deadly currents confirm Alcatraz's escape-proof reputation.
If you're smart at all, you look at the water, you know you can't swim that.
Although the bay has only small, harmless sharks, guards spread rumors and fear among the prisoners.
They always had the word spread between the prisoners and the officers that there were sharks in the water around Alcatraz, and that if you did get away from the prison, that you would be eaten by the sharks. We believed it. I believed it. Everyone believed it.
Inside the cell house, a state-of-the-art, clutch-engaged locking system leaves no doubt in prisoners' minds. This is the slammer.
When you hear that door open and close behind you, you know they've got you, and there's no getting out of that cell.
Built before the days of high-tech security cameras, Alcatraz has to watch its prisoners the low-tech way, with hard-nosed prison guards. Inside the cell house, guards roam the gun galleries. Behind steel bars and heavily armed, they hold the keys to the house and keep close watch over guards and inmates below.
When I'm in the gun gallery, I would watch the correctional officer down in the cell house, and we would track him to make sure that he was always safe.
What the guards don't know is that an inmate named Bernard Coy is paying close attention to the gun gallery. Coy robbed a bank in Kentucky and was sentenced to 25 years hard time. But Coy pretends his violent past is over. He becomes a model inmate, earning the guards' trust. For Alcatraz, it will be a fatal mistake. Coy creates a daring and complicated plan. Steal weapons from the gun gallery, take hostages, and blast his way down to the dock. His first challenge, get inside the gun gallery. It's going to be nearly impossible. Heavy steel bars stop anyone from breaking into this heavily fortified cage. Still, Coy watches the gun gallery closely, looking for a weakness. He finally spots it. By the top of the gallery, the bars curve toward the wall. If he could wedge the bars apart there, he might be able to fit inside.
The gun gallery bars are not as strong as the regular cell bars. These were not what they call top quality steel.
It's a serious oversight by Alcatraz prison officials, and Coy plans to take advantage of it. He asks other inmates for help. Within days, he has pieces for a bar spreader, similar to the one Doc Barker used. He plans to wedge the gun gallery bars apart and grab the guns and cell house keys inside. On May 2nd, 1946, Coy prepares to make his move. Assigned to clean the cell house floor, Coy sends a signal to Sam Shockley, an inmate in D Block. Shockley yells and pounds on the wall. When the guard in the gun gallery runs to investigate, Coy and another inmate, Marvin Hubbard, jump the single guard left and take him hostage. They release a number of other inmates and get to work. Coy strips to his underwear so he can fit through the gun gallery bars. Then he climbs the gun gallery. With the bar spreader, he wedges the bars apart 18 centimeters. It's a tight fit, and Coy barely squeezes through. He gives guns and keys to his fellow inmates and climbs back down to the cell house floor. Now ready to break out, Coy and Hubbard's main accomplice is a violent bank robber named Joe Kretzer. Kretzer has vowed to escape Alcatraz, and this is his chance. So far, Coy's plan to defeat Alcatraz is running like clockwork. Only one obstacle remains, the heavy steel door to the recreation yard. But the right key is nowhere to be found.
It was just a comedy of deadly errors from that point on.
They try all of the keys Coy grabbed, but none work. They're trapped inside. 8 more guards enter the cell house. Coy quickly takes them hostage. Finally, the inmates find the right key. One of the guards had hidden it in a cell toilet. But it's too late. The lock on the rec yard door is jammed.
These jail locks are designed to work that way. You mess around with them, and the lock just jams tight. You can't open it.
Trapped in the cell house with all of Alcatraz on alert, Coy and his crew are in trouble. It looks like Alcatraz has won, but the desperate inmates are only starting to fight.
They elect to shoot her out. They figure they're dead anyhow.
The violence on Alcatraz threatens to escalate out of control. The warden calls in the United States Navy, Coast Guard, and Marine Corps. The Marines assault the cell block with rifles and grenades. Alcatraz becomes a war zone.
We could hear all the fragmentation bombs that they were dropping down the ventilator shafts in the C-block corridor in their attempt to kill Coy, Kretzer, and Hubbard. So the whole building just reverberated with noise.
The escape plan turns into a bloody stalemate. For 2 days, Coy, Kretzer, and Hubbard hold out.
It was tremendous because those rifle grenades and hand grenades were exploding in the windows, and the machine gun fire from the gun gallery was coming down the tiers.
The 3 inmates retreat into a utility corridor, but the military doesn't back down. To get explosives into the corridor, officers have to drill holes in the 10-centimeter thick reinforced concrete ceiling. They lower grenades on strings, using another string to pull the pin and set off the explosives.
When those grenades started coming in, they came in without warning. Surprised the hell out of me when that shrapnel started banging against the wall. Those guys that went out there brought that hell in on themselves.
It takes more than 500 hand grenades, but the strategy eventually works. Although 2 guards die in the battle, authorities kill the 3 cons, including the mastermind, Bernard Coy. Once again, convicts have taken on Alcatraz and lost. The cell house is damaged in the bloody battle, but remains unbroken.
There was a lot of lead and a lot of shrapnel flying around in there. Turned out it did no harm to anybody, but did a lot of physical damage to the government property.
Coy's escape attempt exposes a new weakness, the gun gallery. Authorities add steel mesh to protect the bars. They also crack down by adding more guards, more tool-proof bars, more cell inspections. Alcatraz reasserts its dominance. But the prisoners are determined to show they're stronger. One inmate even goes in a new direction, underground. Alcatraz deserves the nickname The Rock, unbreakable to its very foundation. The solid stone stands 43 meters above the water and stretches over 400 meters long. That's more than 4 football fields in length. Before it was a federal prison, Alcatraz held a military fortress dating back to 1853. The brick citadel was knocked down and the cell house built on top. The builders left the original first floor in place. It became the cell house basement.
What we have here is the brick from the old fortress and the concrete structure from the new cell house. The cell house was virtually built right on top of the fortress.
In the prison's early days, the cell house basement housed several stark dungeon rooms.
This is one of the infamous Alcatraz dungeons. There were 8 rooms like this. Actually, they were old storerooms left over from the Citadel.
It was a particularly brutal form of punishment. Underground in these bare brick rooms, just 3 meters square. By 1938, the dungeon was abandoned, but the rumors linger on.
Out of the time spent down here come the stories that Alcatraz is like Swiss cheese, tunneled out with mysterious passageways leading everywhere, eventually leading to escape to the ocean.
One inmate who believes the tunnel rumors is Jim Quillen, a convicted kidnapper, armed robber, and 3-time prison escapee. He decides to break out of Alcatraz as well. In 1944, Quillen is assigned to work in the cell house kitchen. One day, he discovers a small steam tunnel.
This is a kitchen basement. One day while walking and looking for a way to escape, we saw this lid in here and wondered what was in here.
He plans a breakout to dig his way out of Alcatraz. With another inmate's help, he climbs into the cramped, dark tunnel, only 1 meter high. For weeks, Quillen spends a few minutes a day chipping at the walls. His work is exhausting and dangerous.
And if you broke one of the pipes, you were going to be instantly cooked, because that was live, hot steam. That was my greatest fear.
But despite his efforts, Quillen hits a roadblock.
We tried real hard to get through the wall down there, but unfortunately somebody snitched us off.
Quillen never gets a chance to dig his way out. Once his plan is discovered, he's locked up in D-Block for more than 2 years.
If we had succeeded in getting through the wall, it wouldn't have went anywhere. We had been given bum information.
In reality, Alcatraz does harbor secrets beneath the surface. An old army tunnel runs 45 meters through the middle of the island. Unknown to Jim Quillen, it's nowhere near his tunnel, and it's sealed off with concrete and steel. Quillen's plan was a dead end. He never had a chance against Alcatraz.
In retrospect now, it scares me. I mean, I wonder about my own good common sense that I would go down in there.
Like Doc Barker and Bernard Coy, Jim Quillen couldn't beat Alcatraz. But in 1943, the Model Industries building on the north end of the island becomes the site of another breakout attempt, led by a former public enemy number 1. Floyd Hamilton was the getaway driver for the outlaws Bonnie and Clyde. A bank robber with a long criminal record, the FBI got a hold of Hamilton in 1938 and threw the book at him. 30 years in prison.
Floyd Hamilton came in with a big heavy-duty reputation as a public enemy number 1, as an associate of Bonnie and Clyde, as a tremendous hellraiser from Midwestern penitentiaries.
Arriving at Alcatraz, Hamilton is assigned to work in the Model Industries building. Built of reinforced concrete in 1922, this 3-story building holds the prison workshops, including the blacksmith, mat, and carpentry shop. Well-behaved inmates earned the right to work. Alcatraz believes it's reforming its inmates. Instead, it's merely tempting them. Floyd Hamilton feels that temptation. Working in the mat shop, Hamilton discovers a design flaw. The building is L-shaped. Guards can't see the entire shop at once. They have to leave inmates alone while they do their rounds. What's more, the Model Industries building sits on the edge of the island, right next to the San Francisco Bay. Hamilton decides to make a break and head for the water below. 3 men join Hamilton's daring plot: bank robbers James Borman and Harold Brest, and kidnapper Fred Hunter.
He felt that he had faced death many times and that he had a certain amount of luck on his side.
With tools from the mat shop, the 4 men get to work. Whenever the guards are off conducting rounds, they attack a window with a hacksaw, secretly cutting through a half-centimeter thick steel. It takes them weeks to finish the job. For Hamilton's crew, breaking out of the Model Industries building will be relatively easy, but escaping Alcatraz is another story. Their biggest challenge? The 6 guard towers that overlook the island. Armed guards watch for any suspicious activity near the shore, and they won't hesitate to shoot. But the island's dismal setting provides a welcome solution for Hamilton. The thick fog that helped Doc Barker will act as a shroud, shielding them from view. April 13th, 1943. A dense fog covers the island. In the Model Industries building, the 4 convicts know the time has come. Left alone by a guard, they grab a knife and hammer and lay their trap. When 2 guards come by, they attack both and tie them up. The convicts break the window and climb out. They scale a barbed wire fence and drop down to the water, 15 meters below. The plan works perfectly. On top of the Model Industries building, a tower guard steps outside the booth. Through the fog, he's shocked to see men in the water, swimming away from the island. He raises his rifle and shoots.
We could see the inmates in the water, and the officer on the roof of the model building was firing in their direction.
Inmate James Borman is hit in the head. Harold Brest and Fred Hunter give up, and prison boats pull them from the water. But Floyd Hamilton is nowhere to be found. Everyone assumes he's dead, but Hamilton is hiding in a small cave on the island, too afraid of the water to swim to shore.
He's in there for a day. The next night, he can't stand it anymore because he's so chilled from the cold. He climbed back up over the fence and came into the model building, where he was discovered, much to the embarrassment of the warden, who had announced that he was dead.
Although Hamilton loses the battle, his bolt for freedom sealed the fate of the Model Industries building. To fix the problem, Alcatraz authorities moved the prison workshops to another structure, the new Industries building. Guards can easily supervise the long, thin building. They hope this will end the breakouts. The authorities are wrong. Almost 20 years later, in 1962, 3 clever convicts take on Alcatraz, the legendary Great Escape.
Alcatraz was the most famous prison in the country, if not the world. It was, supposedly escape-proof. This was the most fantastic escape attempt in U.S. history.
For years, inmates looked across the water to San Francisco and dreamed of escape. For most, it remained a dream. At 2 kilometers away, San Francisco is about 80 laps in a 25-meter pool. A strong swimmer might make it in 30 minutes. Huge swells and strong currents could double that time. And tides as fast as 13 kilometers per hour can drag that same swimmer out into the ocean in 20 minutes, long before he reaches land.
Well, the water is so cruel in this bay, and I say cruel, it's so cold. that some of the best swimmers in the country have not been able to challenge this bay.
The water averages a frigid 12 degrees Celsius. In water this cold, core body temperature can drop to dangerous levels in only 30 minutes.
Usually the initial shock of hitting water at that temperature is enough to make you quit. There's a tendency to just freeze you up. And if you're in it for any length of time, then you do freeze up. It's rough stuff to be in.
But one clever convict isn't afraid. Frank Morris is a bank robber with a long history of prison escapes. He's sentenced to 14 years in prison, arriving at Alcatraz in 1960. The minute he lands on the rock, he starts looking for a way out. In prison, other inmates tell Morris the concrete around the cell air vents is disintegrating. It turns out the bay water, the prison's greatest deterrent, will also be the prison's greatest undoing.
Salt water got in these pipes here and then started the corrosion.
When the prison was built, authorities made a critical, money-saving choice. They used salt water to flush the toilets. It was a huge mistake. Over time, salt rusted the pipes, releasing water into the concrete. The resulting corrosion was devastating.
The salt water would work its way into the concrete and get inside to the steel inside, or also known as the rebar. Once it started corroding, it starts expanding. During the expansion process, it makes the concrete crumble, so when it would crumble, it would fall off.
The original prison builders made one other mistake. They mixed brick into the concrete. The brick acted like a sponge, drawing salt water deep into the structure and adding to the corrosion.
But you can see that the corrosiveness is actually expanding up here. You can see where this is expanded. You can see the gap. It's lifted this concrete structure up about an inch already.
Morris joins up with convicts John and Clarence Anglin, bank-robbing brothers desperate to escape. Inspired by the prison's corrosion, the three men decide to dig out of their concrete cells. Their goal is to get out of the cell house, run for the water, and swim for shore. Morris and the Anglins' first challenge? Get tools to dig at the concrete. They turn to their fellow inmates.
My role in helping those guys get out of here was I got some tools for them. Several screwdrivers, a small chisel.
Morris and the Anglins get to work chipping concrete from the air vents. After a few weeks of work, they remove the vents and make a 35-centimeter hole, wide enough to crawl through.
So they perforated the concrete first, and then they busted out the concrete bit by bit to make the hole bigger.
Behind the cell blocks is a utility corridor, over 1 meter wide, choked with sewage pipes. The three men use the pipes to climb 8 meters to the top of the cell block. 2.5 meters above them on the ceiling, 8 ventilator shafts lead directly to the roof. All are sealed off with bars and concrete, except for one. Now, a simple hacksaw blade is all they need to get up there. But Morris faces another challenge: how to hide their activities from the guards. His solution is ingenious: fake human heads. Morris and the Anglins make the heads from soap chips, plaster, paint, and real human hair. They put the heads on their pillows at night and go to work.
The guards would go by and see what they expected to see: a head sleeping in a bed.
But their biggest challenge lies ahead. How can they hope to survive the frigid water? They come up with a clever solution: make a raft and life preservers from rubber prison raincoats. On June 11th, 1962, after the last bed check, Frank Morris and John and Clarence Anglin climb out of their cells. At the top of the cell block, their hard work pays off. They quickly break out the last bars to the roof and taste freedom.
It had to have been a magnificent moment in all of their lives to be standing on that roof, suddenly feeling very exhilarated and free.
As quietly as possible, it's down a vent pipe, Now, there's only a 120-meter run to the shore. When they hit the water, they only know one thing. Freedom is just a short swim away. Early the next morning, when a guard tries to wake John Anglin, what he discovers is astonishing.
He jumped back 4 feet when his head rolled off, and it brought him to attention, to say the least.
Discovery of Morris and the Anglins' escape sets off a massive police and FBI manhunt.
We've all been led to believe that Alcatraz was escape-proof. And of course, you can't build a building that's escape-proof.
But the leads dry up, and their bodies fail to appear in the water. It's as if they've simply vanished. Although their story becomes legendary, the mystery is never solved. 17 years later, the FBI declares the case closed. Most think the three men drowned in the rough water. Others think they made it to freedom and never looked back.
I believe they got away for the simple fact that they're the only three men that are unaccounted for that was on this island. If they know what happened to everybody else, how come they don't know what happened to them?
I don't think they made it. There were no bodies found in the bay, and there was no trace on land.
They disappeared off the face of the earth, which was the best proof to us that they had got away.
Has the unthinkable finally happened? Have the inmates finally defeated Alcatraz? Authorities say the men drowned, but Frank Morris and John and Clarence Anglin did get off the island. Yet one thing is clear. Corroded by saltwater and running out of money, Alcatraz is going down for the count. 6 months later, in December of 1962, one inmate sees his opportunity in the prison's weakened security. John Paul Scott robbed a bank in Kentucky and got 30 years on Alcatraz. He's violent and itching to escape the prison. Once on the rock, Scott is assigned to work in the kitchen. Like Jim Quillen over 15 years earlier, Scott finds it vast, poorly supervised, and full of tools, perfect for an escape. As in other breakout attempts, Scott's plan is simple. He'll saw his way out, run to the water, and swim for land. In the kitchen basement, he finds a corner window. For months, he spends a few minutes a day sawing at a bar with twine, scouring powder, and kitchen utensils. Finally, he does it. He saws through the bar, and it comes loose. Black paint covers his tracks. The overworked prison guards don't see a thing. But Scott faces the same serious challenge. How can he make it across the water? His answer is simple, yet brilliant. He finds a stash of rubber gloves left by another inmate. He'll blow them into balloons, stuff them in his clothes, and float to land. It's an audacious plan. December 16th, 1962. After a head count, John Paul Scott grabs an accomplice, Darrell Parker. The two men run to the kitchen basement. They push out the pre-sawed bar, break through the window, and quickly run to the water. They inflate the rubber gloves. No one sees them. Now all they have to do is swim across the cold and deadly San Francisco Bay.
It was freezing, not enough to overcome his desire to be free.
Parker doesn't get far, but Scott does something no penitentiary inmate has ever done before. He reaches the San Francisco shore.
That was the first time that it was confirmed that somebody could actually escape from Alcatraz and make it to land.
But he's half dead from the cold. Scott is taken to the hospital, where he's immediately recognized and returned to Alcatraz.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, the cell door next to me opened up and they brought down and put Scotty in there. I said, "What the hell are you doing here?" Oh, he said, they caught me over in San Francisco. I said, "How?" He said, "I swam over there."
Scott was caught, but his breakout attempt is the final straw. The island's escape-proof reputation is destroyed. The public learns the shocking news. An inmate has escaped from Alcatraz. Finally, in 1963, expensive maintenance, crumbling buildings, and years of attempted breakouts force authorities to make a decision. They shut Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary down for good. The Rock's time is over. It's the end of an era. For 29 years, Alcatraz housed the most notorious criminals, and all too often erupted as a battlefield of prisoner against prison. In all, 36 men tried to escape in 14 documented attempts. Did any of them reach freedom? 23 were caught. 6 were shot and killed. 2 drowned. But 5 are still listed as missing, presumed dead. But Alcatraz still lost the ultimate battle, not to the inmates, but to its own isolation. The cost of supplying and maintaining a decaying island prison proved too expensive. It closed the prison for good. In 1963, after 109 years of use, Alcatraz sits vacant, falling into disrepair. The government debates plans for the island, including an elaborate space monument. But before a decision is made, the island erupts in controversy. In 1969, nearly 100 Native American activists seize Alcatraz.
Welcome back to Indian land. This was Indian land once again. Alcatraz became a symbol to Indian tribes throughout the United States.
It's a bold strike against the U.S. government, a symbolic reclaiming of all their lost land.
Even though it was the most terrifying prison in the United States history, a prison became a symbol of hope and freedom for Native Americans.
They hold the island for nearly 2 years, but when a number of buildings are vandalized and burned, public support erodes and the occupation falls apart. The island is quiet once more. Alcatraz's time as a prison is over. It becomes the crown jewel of the world's largest urban park, the 30,000-hectare Golden Gate National Recreation Area. Now, prisoners no longer fight to get out. Their battles are over. Instead, visitors battle their way in huge numbers.
On a daily basis, Alcatraz has roughly 5,000 people arriving at the docks. Roughly 300 people every half an hour.
An island that never held more than 700 prisoners at any one time now gets more than 1.5 million visitors a year, making Alcatraz one of San Francisco's 5 most popular destinations. Despite its notoriety, did Alcatraz stop crime? Did it win the battle of prisoner against prison? Some are convinced it did.
When they closed this up in 1963, they could have turned me loose. I would have never committed another crime. This was a deterrent to me, and it made a believer out of me.
Others disagree.
It was the wrong approach to making a bad dog better. Alcatraz was never designed to make it better.
Just as Alcatraz changed over the years, so did the men who served their time here. The story of the prison's transformation is their story as well.
I was put in prison for bank robbery. I served 4 years on this island. 31 years old, I'd never worked a day in my life. Certainly this was the start of rehabilitation, the end of my criminal career. I served my time here, and I think it served me well too.
I was in prison 15 years. I never had no letter, no visits, no contact with that world out there. But now, looking back at it, I can't blame nobody but myself because I put myself here. I was stupid. This is why I deserved to be sent for the type of a person I was. I deserved to be sent to Alcatraz, a prison of punishment.